"You're not invited," my son shouted, barring me from his wedding. I waited for the ceremony to end before revealing my true gift. The crisp morning air of late spring held the scent of blossoming magnolias and the faint hum of nervous anticipation. For Serafina, this day had begun with a quiet ritual, one that had been a balm for her soul for decades. She had risen with the first light, the soft glow illuminating her elegant bedroom, and had dressed with meticulous care. Her silver hair, a testament to her 78 years, was coiffed into a classic, elegant style, each strand perfectly in place. Her silk dress, a dignified shade of sapphire, flowed gracefully, chosen for the quiet joy she had anticipated. This was Liam's wedding day, her beloved grandson, a day she had envisioned with tenderness and hope. She had pictured herself taking a quiet seat among the family, perhaps even sharing a knowing glance with Liam, a bond that had always felt special, untainted by the usual currents of her son's household. A quiet hope, long nurtured, had flickered within her, a hope that on this day, her role as the family matriarch, rather than just its financier, might finally be acknowledged. As the morning progressed, she found herself standing a discreet distance from the grand, flower-adorned entrance of the exclusive country club. The manicured lawn stretched out before her, dotted with arriving guests, their elegant attire a kaleidoscope of soft hues. The scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the heady perfume of roses and lilies, creating an atmosphere of refined celebration. Yet, a cold, knowing dread had begun to settle in Serafina's stomach, a familiar precursor to the disdain she had come to expect from her son, Gareth, and his wife, Giselle. It was a dull ache, a quiet premonition that often accompanied their presence, a reminder of the chasm that separated their expectations from her deepest desires. Then, a sleek black limousine glided to a halt, a conspicuous symbol of overt luxury. From its polished depths emerged Gareth, 52, and Giselle, 50, resplendent in their designer attire. Gareth, perpetually striving for an entrepreneurial breakthrough that never materialized, straightened his tie with a flourish, a self-important smirk playing on his lips, a familiar veneer of unearned confidence. Giselle, slender and impeccably dressed, adjusted her wide-brimmed hat, her gaze sweeping the arriving crowd, her eyes darting, until they landed on Serafina. Her gaze sharpened, transforming into a thinly veiled sneer, a subtle shift that spoke volumes of their true feelings. Gareth, propelled by Giselle's subtle nudge, a nearly imperceptible tilt of her head, a tightening of her perfectly manicured hand on his arm, and an innate desire for public display, began to walk towards Serafina. His expensive leather shoes made barely a sound on the manicured path, but his voice, amplified by the morning quiet and his deliberate projection, carried clearly across the manicured lawns, cutting through the pleasant murmurs of the arriving guests. "Mother! What are you doing here?" he boomed, a theatrical surprise etched onto his features, his tone a carefully crafted blend of shock and indignation. Guests turned, their murmurs ceasing, their attention drawn to the unfolding scene. Serafina remained still, her posture impeccable, her expression unreadable, a silent sentinel observing the unfolding drama, the carefully orchestrated performance. She felt the eyes of strangers upon her, the weight of their sudden curiosity, but her composure remained unblemished, a lifetime of quiet resilience holding her steady. "I am here for Liam's wedding, Gareth," Serafina replied, her voice soft but firm, utterly devoid of the tremor of fear or anger he might have expected, a voice that spoke of an inner strength that had been tested repeatedly over the years. Gareth's face contorted into an exaggerated expression of shock, clearly designed for the benefit of the onlookers, for the hushed crowd that now watched with morbid fascination. "But mother, you're not invited." His voice rose, the words ringing out with a cruel finality, echoing slightly in the crisp morning air, "You're not invited." He gestured dismissively with a wave of his hand, a gesture that conveyed utter contempt, as if shooing away a bothersome insect. Giselle, standing a few paces behind him, a triumphant glint in her eyes, allowed a small, satisfied smile to grace her lips, a silent acknowledgement of their shared cruelty. A collective gasp rippled through the gathering guests. Some averted their eyes, embarrassed by the blatant public humiliation, their faces flushing with discomfort. Others stared openly, a mixture of pity and curiosity on their faces, their whispers now carrying hushed tones of judgment. Serafina felt the familiar sting, not of betrayal, for that had become a constant companion, a dull ache she had long learned to live with, but of profound disappointment. This was not just exclusion, it was a performance, a deliberate shaming designed to assert their dominance and remind her of her place. Yet, her composure remained unblemished. There was no tremor in her hands, no flicker of pain in her eyes. Instead, a glacial calm settled over her, a quiet resolution solidifying within her. The dam, holding back 2 decades of silent sacrifice and unspoken hurt, of ignored slights and unreciprocated gestures, had finally, irrevocably burst. A decision, long brewing beneath the surface of her quiet generosity, had finally crystallized. "I understand," Serafina said, her voice barely a whisper, yet carrying an unexpected weight, a quiet authority that belied its softness. She offered Gareth a small, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture he would later replay in his mind, unable to decipher its true meaning, mistaking her calm for submission. Then, with an elegant turn, her silk dress rustling softly, she walked away from the entrance. She did not walk towards her car, the one she usually drove to formal events, but towards a small, secluded gazebo nestled amidst a grove of ancient oak trees, just within sight of the ceremony area. The gazebo, draped in climbing roses, offered a private vantage point, a quiet sanctuary from the public spectacle. From there, she could observe, unseen, as the wedding proceeded. She watched as Liam, her beloved grandson, exchanged vows with his radiant bride, oblivious to the quiet drama that had just transpired, to the profound shift that had occurred only moments before. And as the first joyous cheers erupted after the pronouncement of, "You may kiss the bride," a wave of pure, unadulterated resolve washed over Serafina. She calmly reached into her designer handbag, her slender fingers retrieving her smartphone. With a precision born of deliberate intent, a certainty that had been building for years, she began to dial. The first call was to her legal team. The second, to her primary wealth manager. The third, to her bank. The game, she decided, was over. The rules had changed, and she was no longer a player in their charade. To understand Serafina's measured response, one needed to delve into the labyrinthine history of her relationship with Gareth and Giselle, a narrative steeped in generosity, manipulation, and ultimately, a profound lack of gratitude. Serafina's substantial wealth was not inherited but built by her late husband, Arthur, a brilliant and shrewd real estate magnate. Arthur, a man of quiet integrity and immense foresight, had meticulously cultivated their fortune through astute investments, leaving Serafina a legacy not just of financial security, but of financial power. Their early life together had been one of careful planning and diligent work, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared dreams. Serafina often recalled Arthur's words, "Money is a tool, my dear. A powerful one, to be sure, but a tool nonetheless. Use it wisely, and it will serve you well. Let it use you, and it will become a burden." For over 2 decades since his passing, Serafina had been the silent, ever-present financial lifeline for her son's family, often recalling Arthur's caution with a growing sense of unease. Her deepest desire was simply to be a cherished, included member of her family, not merely a resource, a walking, talking ATM. From the moment Arthur passed, leaving Serafina the sole steward of their vast estate, Gareth and Giselle had viewed her not as a grieving mother or a wise elder, but as an inexhaustible ATM, a seemingly bottomless well of funds. Their own financial endeavors, Gareth's various entrepreneurial ventures, a short-lived organic dog food delivery service that left her garage overflowing with bags of premium kibble that no one bought, an ill-fated app for personalized artisanal coffee blends that garnered 3 downloads before collapsing, and a disastrous attempt at a high-end bespoke hat business that resulted in a mountain of velvet and feathers and 0 sales, consistently crumbled, leaving a trail of debt and unfulfilled promises. Each failure, however, was conveniently cushioned by Serafina's quiet intervention, a financial buffer that prevented them from ever truly experiencing the consequences of their own ineptitude. She had always hoped that if she smoothed their path, they would eventually find their footing, or perhaps, simply appreciate her quiet support. She had discreetly funded everything. Their sprawling suburban home, a veritable mansion in a prestigious neighborhood, had been purchased with a hefty down payment from Serafina's accounts, a check she had written with a hopeful heart. Its subsequent mortgage payments, totaling over $7,000 a month, had been seamlessly transferred from her private trust, month after month, year after year, a constant, quiet drain on her resources. She had paid for the property taxes, the exorbitant landscaping fees that kept their sprawling lawns immaculate, and the constant stream of renovations that Giselle deemed absolutely essential to maintain their social standing: new kitchens with imported marble countertops, master bath overhauls featuring rainfall showers and heated floors, custom-built wine cellars that remained largely empty of actual wine. Each request, each renovation, was presented as a necessity, an unquestionable demand. Their luxury vacations were legendary among their friends, all underwritten by Serafina. Annual trips to the Maldives, 2-week cruises through the Caribbean on ships with personal butler service, ski trips to Aspen where they stayed in chalets with private hot tubs, and lavish European tours that saw them flitting between 5-star hotels in Paris, Rome, and London, each itinerary meticulously planned by Giselle, each bill quietly settled by Serafina. She would receive the detailed itineraries, often accompanied by a casual, "Mother, we just booked this incredible trip, the kids are so excited," and then the invoices would follow, a silent expectation. She had funded the children's lavish birthday parties, complete with professional entertainers and elaborate themes, the expensive private school tuition for their elementary years, and later, the exorbitant high tuition fees for her grandchildren's elite university programs, prestigious institutions like Ivy League universities and renowned medical schools, each costing upwards of $80,000 a year. Serafina had never once questioned these expenditures, believing she was investing in her family's future, in their happiness, in a bond that she desperately wished was reciprocal. Beyond the grand gestures, there were countless smaller, yet equally significant, acts of financial support. When Gareth's latest business venture required a new set of sleek, expensive office furniture, ergonomic chairs, polished mahogany desks, state-of-the-art computers, Serafina paid. When Giselle insisted on a new luxury SUV every 3 years, citing safety concerns or social necessity, the lease payments for the Range Rover and the Mercedes were drawn directly from Serafina's accounts, a quiet monthly subtraction. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry for Giselle, exclusive club memberships that Serafina herself rarely utilized, even the weekly grocery bills for their lavish household, filled with gourmet foods and imported delicacies, all were, at some point, discreetly covered by Serafina, often through credit cards she had provided and meticulously paid off. She knew the balances, the endless stream of charges, but she had always held on to the hope that this unending generosity would eventually be reciprocated, if not in kind, then in genuine affection and inclusion. Despite this ceaseless flow of generosity, gratitude was a foreign concept in Gareth and Giselle's household. Their interactions with Serafina were characterized by thinly veiled disdain and impatient dismissiveness. Calls were typically brief, usually involving a new request for funds or an update on a crisis that required her immediate financial intervention. There were rarely calls just to chat, to see how she was, to simply connect. Visits were rare and awkward, Serafina often feeling like an intruder in the very home her money maintained. She would sit politely, listening to their boasts of social events she was never invited to, or their complaints about trivial inconveniences, never feeling truly seen or heard. They routinely excluded her from their social circle and significant family moments, unless, of course, her financial input was explicitly required. Family dinners were almost non-existent, and when they did occur, Serafina was often relegated to the background, an elderly prop rather than a cherished matriarch, her presence merely a formality. "Mother, darling, we're simply swamped this weekend," Giselle would say, her voice dripping with false sweetness, a saccharine tone that grated on Serafina's nerves, when Serafina suggested a quiet Sunday lunch, hoping for a simple, shared meal. "But perhaps you could send over that check for Liam's new laptop. His old one is simply ancient, darling. He can barely keep up with his classmates." Or Gareth would chime in, his voice urgent and manipulative, "Yes, Mother, it's a crucial tool for his studies. We can't have him falling behind, can we? The tuition alone is a fortune, but you know how important education is." Each request, each justification, felt like a small knife twist, reminding her of her transactional value. Serafina yearned for more than just their polite requests and condescending smiles. She longed for genuine conversation, for the warmth of family dinners where she was truly a part of the family, for the simple joy of being invited to Thanksgiving or Christmas without having to offer to pay for the entire affair, or worse, not being invited at all. She wanted to share her wisdom, her stories from a long and rich life, her perspective, but they saw only her bank balance, a bottomless pit of resources to be exploited. Each exclusion, each dismissive glance, each unreturned call chipped away at her heart, leaving behind a residue of quiet sorrow and a growing sense of being taken for granted, of being invisible except for her wealth. The wedding invitation snub was not an isolated incident, it was the crescendo of 2 decades of emotional and financial exploitation, the final, shattering blow to a hope that had long been dwindling. The public humiliation, however, was the catalyst. It transformed her quiet sorrow into a steely resolve, a recognition that enough, finally, was enough. The dam had burst, and the floodgates of her patience had irrevocably opened. As the last echoes of the wedding vows faded and the joyful strains of the recessional music filled the air, Serafina remained in her secluded gazebo. The sounds of the reception, now commencing with laughter and celebratory chatter, drifted towards her, a distant hum of merriment she observed with detached calm. She watched, a serene observer, as Gareth and Giselle mingled among the guests, their faces alight with pride and social triumph, utterly unaware of the tectonic shift that had just occurred in their financial landscape, the silent earthquake that had just begun beneath their feet. Serafina's phone was cool in her hand, her fingers steady as she began her calls, a methodical precision guiding her actions. Her first call was to Mr. Alastair Finch, her primary legal counsel, a man as discreet as he was efficient, a master of legal precision. Alastair, Serafina began, her voice calm and measured, a tone he recognized as one of absolute resolve. I need you to initiate the immediate cessation of all financial support to Gareth and Giselle Davies, and their children. This includes, but is not limited to, the mortgage payments on their property at 14 Willow Creek Lane, all vehicle leases, all trust fund disbursements for the grandchildren, and any credit lines I have extended to them. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Mr. Finch, a man accustomed to Serafina's quiet authority, and knowing her history with her son's family, paused for only a moment, a subtle shift in his posture indicating his understanding of the gravity of her request. Madam Serafina, may I inquire about the reason for this sudden and comprehensive decision? He asked, his voice professional, yet with a hint of something akin to admiration. The reason, Alastair, Serafina replied, a hint of steel in her tone that was rarely present, a quiet fire that had finally ignited, is that I have decided to cease being an endless resource. My family has made it abundantly clear that my presence is neither desired nor appreciated, unless it comes with a monetary attachment. Effective immediately, that attachment is severed. There will be no more payments, no more bailouts, no more quiet interventions. They are on their own. Understood, Madam Serafina, Mr. Finch confirmed, already typing notes on his keyboard, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. I will instruct my team to begin the process immediately. It will be swift and thorough. There will be no loopholes, no exceptions. Consider it done. A wave of quiet satisfaction rippled through Serafina. Next, she called Mrs. Eleanor Vance, her wealth manager. Mrs. Vance, a sharp, empathetic woman who had witnessed Serafina's quiet generosity for years, and who had often expressed subtle concern about the extent of her expenditures on her family, listened intently as Serafina repeated her instructions. Eleanor, Serafina explained, her voice now lighter, tinged with a sense of liberation, I also need to reallocate a significant portion of my liquid assets. I want to establish a new philanthropic foundation, focusing on arts education for underprivileged youth. And I wish to invest in some long-term, high-growth opportunities that have absolutely no connection to my immediate family's current ventures or future endeavors. I want to build something new, something that truly reflects my values. Mrs. Vance expressed her full support, a note of quiet approval and genuine pleasure in her voice. It will be done, Serafina. And may I say, it's a wonderful decision, truly inspiring. Finally, a call to her private banker, Mr. John Caldwell, to close off any joint accounts, revoke any access Gareth or Giselle might have had, and to cancel the supplementary credit cards issued under her name but used by them. Mr. Caldwell, I require a full audit of all transactions associated with my extended family's accounts for the past 2 decades. I want to see precisely how much has been disbursed, every single penny. I want it all documented, down to the last cent. A sense of meticulous accounting, a need for absolute clarity, guided this final request. By the time the wedding reception was in full swing, the sounds of music and laughter echoing faintly from the distance, Serafina's financial world had been meticulously untangled from that of her son's family. The invisible threads of support, once so robust and seemingly endless, had been cleanly cut. She felt a profound sense of lightness, a burden lifted from her shoulders. The first ripple of panic struck Gareth and Giselle 2 days later. Giselle, at a high-end boutique she frequented, attempting to purchase a new designer handbag for a lavish charity gala, a handbag that cost more than some people's monthly rent, handed over her credit card with a flourish. The sales associate swiped it, then her brow furrowed in a slight frown. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Davies," she said apologetically, her voice professional but firm. "It appears this card has been declined." Giselle, mortified, insisted she try again, then again, to no avail, her face flushing with humiliation. "This is impossible," she fumed, snatching the card back and calling Serafina's number, only to be met by a voicemail. Serafina had quietly blocked their numbers, a small, yet significant act of self-preservation. Later that week, a stark white envelope arrived. It was from their mortgage lender, a curt notice stating that their last payment had been missed and warning of late fees. Gareth, usually oblivious to such mundane matters, his attention perpetually on his next grand, ill-fated scheme, frowned, a flicker of genuine concern crossing his face. "Mother must have forgotten," he grumbled, trying Serafina's number again. Still no answer, only the polite, yet maddeningly unhelpful, robotic voice of her voicemail. The following days brought a cascade of unsettling developments. The premium cable subscription was suddenly cut off mid-show, plunging their evening entertainment into darkness. The luxury car lease company called, their tone increasingly insistent, requesting an immediate payment that Serafina always handled with quiet efficiency. The elite golf club they frequented, a cornerstone of Gareth's social networking, sent an email, stating their membership was suspended due to unpaid dues. The most alarming calls, however, came from their grandchildren's universities. Both institutions, known for their rigorous financial departments, informed Liam and his sister, Chloe, that their tuition payments for the upcoming semester had not been received, and their enrollment was now at serious risk. The carefully constructed world of financial ease was rapidly crumbling around them. Giselle, her perfectly manicured nails tapping frantically on the granite countertop of their vast kitchen, began to pace, her usual composure shattering into 1,000 anxious pieces. This isn't like her. She's always so meticulous with payments. Something must be wrong. Is she ill? Has she forgotten something? Her desperation was palpable. Gareth, however, was already connecting the dots, a cold dread creeping into his heart, a dawning realization that chilled him to the bone. "The wedding," he muttered, his face paling, a sudden memory of Serafina's calm, unwavering gaze. The way she looked at me, the way she just walked away. She didn't look upset, she looked resolved. "Don't be ridiculous, Gareth," Giselle scoffed, though a flicker of fear danced in her eyes, betraying her attempts at denial. "She's your mother. She would never cut us off completely. We're her family. She loves Liam and Chloe. This has to be a mistake, a misunderstanding." But as the days bled into a week, and the pile of overdue notices grew thicker, their denial began to crack, splintering under the relentless pressure of reality. The truth, cold and unforgiving, was slowly dawning on them. The seemingly endless well of Serafina's generosity had run dry. And the panic, once a distant hum, began to crescendo into a desperate, frantic clamor, filling their opulent, yet increasingly precarious, home. The phone calls had gone unanswered. Text messages, increasingly frantic and demanding, were met with an impenetrable silence. The initial annoyance, a mere inconvenience, had morphed into a gnawing fear, then into full-blown panic that gripped Gareth and Giselle in its icy talons. Giselle, her usual composure shattered, her perfectly coiffed hair disheveled from constant agitated running of her fingers through it, paced their living room, an opulent space now shadowed by the looming threat of financial ruin. She won't answer. She won't answer. What are we going to do, Gareth? The university is threatening to withdraw Liam and Chloe. They said it's non-negotiable. The car company called again about the Mercedes. They said if the payment isn't made by Friday, they'll repossess it. The Range Rover too. We'll have nothing. Her voice rose to a near shriek, her desperation raw and exposed. Gareth, usually dismissive of Seraphina's feelings, his arrogance a shield against any personal responsibility, was now a pale imitation of his arrogant self. The reality of their situation had slammed into him with the force of a wrecking ball, demolishing his carefully constructed world of entitlement. We have to go there, he declared, his voice strained, laced with a tremor of fear he couldn't hide. We have to go to her house. She has to explain this. She can't do this to us. She simply can't. He clung to the last vestiges of hope that this was all a misunderstanding, a temporary peak. They drove to Seraphina's elegant, understated estate in a heavy silence, the weight of their precarious future pressing down on them, each mile bringing them closer to a confrontation they both dreaded and desperately needed. Seraphina's home was a bastion of quiet dignity, surrounded by ancient trees and meticulously kept gardens, a sanctuary of ordered beauty. It felt alien to them now, not the familiar source of their comfortable lifestyle, but a fortress of silent judgment. When Seraphina opened the door, her expression was calm, almost serene, a stark contrast to their disheveled, frantic appearance. She wore a simple cashmere sweater and tailored trousers, her silver hair pulled back neatly, her eyes clear and unwavering. There was no surprise in her eyes, only a quiet expectation, as if she had known this moment was inevitable, had perhaps even anticipated it with a quiet patience. Gareth. Giselle, she greeted, her voice even, devoid of warmth or anger, merely a statement of fact. I had a feeling you would eventually come. Mother. What is going on? Gareth blurted out, pushing past her into the grand foyer, his carefully constructed decorum crumbling. Giselle was hot on his heels, her face a mask of panic and feigned concern. Why aren't you answering our calls? Why are our cards being declined? The mortgage payment, Mother. The house. They're threatening to foreclose. What about Liam and Chloe? Their education is ruined. Giselle, regaining some of her manipulative poise, stepped forward, her voice dripping with feigned concern, a practiced sweetness that now sounded hollow and false. Seraphina, darling, are you quite well? We've been so worried. You haven't been yourself since Liam's wedding. Is something wrong? You know we're here for you. Her eyes, however, darted around the familiar, expensive surroundings, assessing, calculating, a desperate plea for reassurance that their gravy train hadn't truly derailed, that this was merely a temporary hiccup. Seraphina closed the door quietly, the soft click echoing in the spacious foyer. Her gaze swept over their faces, taking in their fear, their entitlement, their transparent attempts at manipulation. A quiet, knowing sadness touched her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by resolute strength. I am perfectly well, thank you, Giselle. And yes, something is indeed wrong. For 2 decades, I have poured my late husband's legacy, my life's comfort, and my own emotional well-being into supporting your lives. Every luxury, every convenience, every aspiration you've had has been underwritten by my hand, by Arthur's hard-earned money. Gareth bristled, indignation flaring, unable to grasp the enormity of her statement. Mother, what are you talking about? You've always been so generous. We're your family. This is what family does. You have so much, what's a little money between family? Family, Seraphina repeated, a faint, sad smile touching her lips, a smile devoid of humor, full of a quiet ache. Is it, Gareth? Is it family that allows me to pay for your sprawling suburban home, month after month, when your entrepreneurial ventures consistently fail, leaving you with nothing but debt and grand pronouncements? Do you recall the mortgage statement, Gareth? $7,200 every single month. For 20 years. That's over $1.7 million, just on your house. Not to mention the property taxes, the endless renovations, the landscaping fees. All paid by me. Giselle scoffed, waving a dismissive hand, attempting to diminish the immense sums. Oh, please, Serafina. You have so much. It's just money. You don't even need it all. Just money? Serafina's voice hardened imperceptibly, a chilling frost entering her tone. Is it just money that funded your annual luxury vacations? The 2-week cruise to the Caribbean last year, which cost nearly $50,000, complete with a private deck and a personal chef? The ski trip to Aspen where you rented an entire chalet, the lavish European tour where you stayed in suites costing thousands a night? You never once offered to contribute, did you? You simply presented me with the itinerary and expected the bill to vanish, as if by magic. You treated my fortune as your personal allowance, to be spent without thought or consequence. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle, to truly sink into their self-absorbed minds. And the cars, Giselle. The new Mercedes every 3 years, then the Range Rover, always the latest model, always the most expensive. The lease payments, the insurance, the maintenance. All covered. You demanded the best for yourselves, while offering me nothing but thinly veiled disdain, a dismissive wave, an unreturned call. Do you remember the time you forgot to invite me to your New Year's Eve party, only for me to see photos of it on social media the next day, showing me exactly what I had missed, who I was excluded from? Or the countless family dinners I was never included in, despite living less than 20 minutes away, despite my longing for simple companionship? Gareth's face was flushing, but he quickly resorted to emotional blackmail, his voice rising in desperation. But the children, mother. Liam and Chloe. Their university tuition. You can't just cut them off. You're ruining their future. This is cruel, even for you. How can you do this to your own grandchildren? Cruel? Serafina met his gaze, her eyes unwavering, holding his gaze with a power he had never seen before. Is it cruel to expect 2 able-bodied, intelligent young adults to contribute to their own education, particularly when their parents have lived for 2 decades off the generosity of another? I paid for their private schooling, their tutors, their extracurricular activities, their elite university programs, over $80,000 a year for each of them. Did either of them ever once express genuine gratitude, Gareth? Or did they simply accept it as their due, as their birthright, just as you and Giselle have, never once considering the source, the sacrifice? Giselle, seeing her usual tactics failing, her voice rising in a desperate crescendo, tried a different approach. Serafina, this is blackmail. You're punishing us. What kind of mother does this to her own son? We'll tell everyone what you've done. We'll tell them you've abandoned us. You'll be a pariah. Serafina's gaze was like ice, chilling them to the bone, stripping away their pretense. Tell them, Giselle. Tell them precisely what I have done. Tell them I have ceased funding your extravagant lifestyle, your endless cycle of consumption. Tell them I have stopped paying for your mansion, your luxury cars, your designer clothes, your endless vacations, and your children's elite education. Tell them that after Gareth publicly humiliated me at my grandson's wedding, shouting, "You're not invited," in front of 100 guests, after 2 decades of quiet degradation, I decided that my role as your personal ATM was officially over. Tell them all of it. I have nothing to hide. You, on the other hand, have much to explain. Gareth gasped, a choked sound escaping him, finally understanding the depth of her resolve, the unwavering finality in her voice. You did this because of the wedding, he whispered, horrified, the full weight of his public cruelty crashing down on him. No, Gareth, Serafina corrected, her voice firm, unwavering. I did this because of 2 decades of being used, abused, and taken for granted. The wedding was merely the final, undeniable proof that my presence in your lives was transactional, not relational. It was the moment I realized that my self-respect was worth more than your manufactured affection, more than your casual exploitation. It was the moment I chose myself. She looked directly at them, her gaze piercing, holding their eyes captive. My decision is final. All financial support has been terminated. The mortgage payments, the car leases, the trust funds, everything. You are now entirely responsible for your own finances. Your comfort, your convenience, your future, it is all now in your hands. Giselle let out a small, choked cry, a sound of utter defeat. Gareth, for the first time in his life, looked genuinely lost, his arrogance replaced by a raw, naked fear, his eyes wide with the realization of their utter destitution. The confrontation was over. Serafina had spoken her truth, calmly, decisively, and with an unshakable power that left them utterly disarmed, their pleas and manipulations having shattered against her newfound resolve. She stood before them, not as the frail, generous matriarch they had exploited, but as a woman who had reclaimed her dignity and her wealth, a phoenix rising from the ashes of 2 decades of quiet suffering. Gareth and Giselle stumbled out of Serafina's house, their earlier bluster replaced by a chilling realization that had taken root deep within their core. The silence in the car on the way home was heavy, punctuated only by Giselle's choked sobs and Gareth's heavy, ragged breaths. The mansion that had once symbolized their success, their opulent lifestyle, now felt like a gilded cage, its vastness echoing with the chilling truth of their newfound financial precarity, a fortress of impending doom. The immediate consequences were swift and brutal, a relentless cascade of reality. Within days, a formal foreclosure notice arrived from the mortgage lender, a stark red stamp on a crisp white envelope, detailing the missed payments and the impending legal action. The $7,000 monthly payments, once a seamless transfer from Serafina's accounts, had ceased, leaving a gaping hole in their non-existent budget. They had barely enough in their own meager checking account to cover groceries for a week, let alone a mortgage payment that had always been an abstract concept to them, handled by a benevolent, unseen hand. The luxury car repossession threats escalated. The Mercedes, a symbol of Giselle's social standing, her identity, was the first to go, towed away unceremoniously from their driveway one morning as she watched from the kitchen window, leaving her utterly humiliated, stripped of her veneer of sophistication. The Range Rover soon followed, its powerful engine now silent, its keys confiscated. They were forced to dust off an old, forgotten sedan Gareth had kept in the garage, a relic from a previous, less opulent life, a stark contrast to their usual mode of transport, a constant reminder of their fall from grace. The grandchildren, Liam and Chloe, returned home from university, their faces a mixture of confusion, anger, and resentment. "What's going on, Mom? Dad?" Liam demanded, his voice tight with panic, his carefully constructed future dissolving before his eyes. "The bursar's office said our enrollment is suspended. They said Grandma Serafina isn't paying anymore. They threatened to pull my scholarships too." Chloe, usually calm and composed, was on the verge of tears, her elite medical school dreams shattering. "All my friends are talking about it. I can't go back. How could she do this to us?" Gareth and Giselle, cornered and desperate, tried to spin a tale of Serafina being unwell or going through a difficult phase, their voices weak, their excuses transparent. But the children, for the first time, saw through their parents' flimsy excuses, the carefully constructed facade of their parents' affluence crumbling before their eyes, replaced by the ugly reality of their utter financial dependence and irresponsibility. Arguments erupted daily, shouting matches about who was to blame, about their inability to manage money, about their years of taking Serafina for granted. The once glamorous household descended into chaos, filled with recriminations and despair, a bitter realization of their own making. Their social standing, meticulously cultivated by Giselle through years of lavish spending and calculated appearances, also began to unravel. They couldn't afford their club memberships, the lavish dinner parties they once hosted, or the designer clothes that were their social uniform, their badge of belonging. Friends, sensing a shift, began to distance themselves, their invitations dwindling, their smiles becoming strained. The whispers started, circulating through their once exclusive circles. The Davies, once admired for their opulent lifestyle, were now pitted, or worse, scorned, their carefully constructed social world collapsing. Meanwhile, Serafina began to taste the sweet, unfamiliar nectar of true freedom. The first evening after the confrontation, she did not feel the lingering ache of sadness or the familiar sting of their ingratitude. Instead, a profound lightness settled over her, a quiet peace that radiated from within. She called Martha, an old friend from her university days, a kindred spirit whom she hadn't spoken to in years due to Gareth and Giselle's subtle dissuasion, their constant demands leaving her no time for genuine connection. "Martha," Serafina said, a genuine smile in her voice, a lightness she hadn't felt in decades, "I'm finally free. Would you like to join me for a trip to Italy? Perhaps Florence? I've always dreamed of seeing the Uffizi Gallery." Martha, delighted by the unexpected call, accepted without hesitation, her voice warm and excited. Serafina spent her evenings reading books she had always wanted to delve into, the classics and new authors she had put off, listening to classical music that filled her home with harmonious sounds, and tending to her magnificent rose garden, a hobby she had neglected for too long due to the constant demands on her time and energy. She enjoyed quiet, gourmet meals she prepared herself, savoring each bite without the underlying tension of obligation or the expectation of a call demanding funds. For the first time in 2 decades, her home felt truly her own, a sanctuary, not a bank. The weight of supporting an undeserving family had been lifted, and Serafina, for the first time in a very long time, felt a profound sense of peace. The consequences for Gareth and Giselle were only just beginning, a long, arduous journey of self-reliance, but for Serafina, a new, liberating chapter had irrevocably begun, a chapter of self-discovery and joyous freedom. Months passed, and the initial shockwaves of Serafina's decision settled into a new, albeit uncomfortable, reality for Gareth and Giselle. The sprawling suburban mansion, once a symbol of their unearned success, of their unbridled consumption, was finally foreclosed upon. The legal notices, the eviction orders, became a grim reality. They were forced to move into a modest, rented townhouse in a less prestigious neighborhood, a stark downsize that shattered Giselle's remaining social pretensions and Gareth's entrepreneurial illusions. He, for the first time in his adult life, was forced to seek stable employment, taking a managerial position at a local hardware store, a far cry from his grand, failed ventures and his imagined empire. Giselle, stripped of her luxury cars, her designer wardrobe, and her exclusive club memberships, found herself navigating public transport and bargain bins, her socialite facade crumbling under the weight of mundane reality and financial strain. Their relationship, once fueled by shared ambition and Serafina's endless money, became strained, punctuated by bitter arguments and resentful silences, the foundation of their lives having been built on sand. Liam and Chloe, their elite university careers abruptly halted, initially expressed anger and betrayal, directing their frustration at Serafina for what they perceived as her cruelty. But necessity, as always, proved to be a harsh teacher. Forced to work part-time jobs to save for community college tuition, they began to understand the value of $1, the effort required to earn it, and the consequences of their parents' financial irresponsibility. The privilege they had always known evaporated, replaced by the grind of earning their own way, of budgeting, of making sacrifices. There was no longer a hidden source of funds, no safety net, no magical hand to sweep away their problems. They were truly on their own, facing the world for the first time without a gilded shield. Meanwhile, Serafina was flourishing, blossoming in her newfound freedom. Months after her decisive action, she was a woman transformed, radiating a quiet joy and newfound vitality that seemed to shave years from her appearance. Her eyes sparkled with a genuine inner light. She had indeed taken that trip to Italy with Martha, exploring ancient ruins, marveling at Renaissance art, and savoring exquisite cuisine, creating memories that were truly her own, untainted by obligation or the demands of others. Upon her return, she immersed herself in her passions. The Philanthropic Foundation for Arts Education was established, and Serafina found profound satisfaction in personally overseeing its projects, seeing her wealth make a tangible, positive impact on young lives, nurturing talent that might otherwise have been overlooked. She joined a local book club, delighting in stimulating discussions, took up painting lessons, discovering a hidden artistic flair, and hosted intimate, genuine gatherings with friends who valued her for who she was, not what she possessed, for her wisdom and her quiet strength. Her elegant home, once a quiet refuge from the demands of her son's family, now hummed with a different kind of life, one filled with her own chosen activities, her own schedule, her own joy. She spent her days nurturing her magnificent garden, exploring new recipes, and engaging in stimulating conversations, truly living for herself. The quiet sorrow that had once defined her, the constant ache of unreciprocated love, had been replaced by a serene contentment, a deep and abiding peace. She looked younger, her eyes sparkling with an inner light that had been dimmed for too long. Serafina had learned that true freedom was not merely financial independence, but emotional liberation, the profound peace that came from releasing herself from the burden of others' expectations and entitlement. The moral of Serafina's story resonated deeply within her and now, through her experience, could resonate with others. Love and respect, she had discovered, cannot be bought with money, no matter how vast the fortune, no matter how endless the generosity. Genuine connection is built on mutual appreciation, on reciprocal kindness, not on financial dependency or transactional relationships. The journey of self-preservation, of reclaiming one's dignity and self-worth, is paramount, a necessary act of courage. Serafina had spent decades investing in the happiness of others, only to find her own happiness in finally investing in herself, in her passions, in her peace of mind. Her story became a testament to the fact that sometimes, the greatest gift one can give, both to oneself and to those who have taken too much, is the gift of withdrawal, allowing them to learn the hard, but essential, lessons of self-reliance and the true value of what they had so carelessly discarded. Thank you for joining us on Serafina's incredible journey of strength, resilience, and ultimate liberation. Her story is a powerful reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, can be profoundly satisfying. If Serafina's unwavering spirit and her powerful reclamation of self resonated with you, consider exploring our playlist for more narratives that will inspire and provoke thought, stories of courage, triumph, and life lessons that speak to the human spirit. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another empowering story like Serafina's. Now, we turn to you, our cherished audience. Serafina's experience with ingratitude and exploitation is unfortunately not uncommon. Have you ever faced such a profound lack of gratitude from someone you've helped? Or, if you were in Serafina's shoes, what would you have done differently, or perhaps, precisely the same? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We love hearing from you.